Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today it is Thursday. It's October 10th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. Please go and visit us on X. I'm at Corsi Jerome 1. I'm still being shadow banned. The people who work for Elon Musk are still running the company. You can get, of course, we're doing daily podcasts during the weekdays at thetruthcentral.com. And on Substack, you can reach me at jeromecorsiphd.substack.com. Now, I'm putting a lot of stuff out about the election and these algorithms that we're finding in the various state databases, state Board of Election voter registration rolls. And if you go to gods5stones.com, you can see that we've now had the first of the battleground states, Wisconsin, that has we found an algorithm in its database. So Gods, G-O-D-S, no apostrophe, G-O-D-S, you spell out 5, F-I-V-E, and stones, S-T-O-N-E-S.com, gods5stones.com. And there you can see the work that's on Wisconsin. Andrew Paquette's paper, Dr. Andrew Paquette's paper on Wisconsin. And what we've shown here is that, again, the battleground states, I think, are all going to have algorithms in them. At least it seems that way from the work we're doing in progress. Now, I want to report on a decision, a court decision. This was a decision that comes out of the Arizona U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona. I have the decision right here. It's American Encore et al. Versus Adrian Fontes. And Fontes is the Arizona Secretary of State. And he's a Democrat. Of course, he's another woke jerk. Okay, and so Arizona, which during the 2024 election coming up, has now got some new operating orders, because in 2020, what happened was that Cochise County in Arizona refused to certify the midterm election. And in every odd year, the Arizona Secretary of State publishes an elections procedures manual that governs the administration of elections in Arizona. And the provision that is relevant to us was that if a county refused to certify the election, they could be charged with a felony, the people who refused to do it, the certifiers. And you could have a canvass, what they call it, where the state of Arizona, Secretary of State, canvasses the state, excluding the votes, of the Cochise County, the county that did not certify the election. And declare the election final. So the second rule, I'm going to read from the decision. The second rule, probably unprecedented in the history of the United States, because the Secretary of State nearly carte blanche authority to disenfranchise the ballots of potentially millions of Arizona voters. The court refers to it as the canvass provision, and it provides, quote, if the official canvass of any county has not been received by this deadline, the Secretary of State must proceed with the state canvass without including the votes of the missing county, i.e., the Secretary of State is not permitted to use an unofficial vote count in lieu of the county's official canvass. Okay, so plaintiffs in this action argue, so basically what the court decided, and I'll read some of the internal decision here, which is extremely relevant to the algorithms, and I'll explain how in just a minute. But let me find the relevant language here in the decision, because the court was this was a Arizona District Court judge, and he said, the right to vote is fundamental. And a quote from Harper v. Virginia State Board of Elections, which is 1966 decision. And that's a state law or practice that unduly burdens or restricts that fundamental right violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That's a case called Election Integrity Project, California, Inc., v. Weber. It was a 2024 case. So the plaintiffs argue that the plain terms of the canvass provision require the secretary to nullify a county's vote if the county board of supervisors fails to timely canvass. Courts have recognized that the disenfranchisement is a severe burden on the right to vote, cites more cases, and so if disenfranchising thousands of eligible voters does not amount to a severe burden on the right to vote, then this court is at a loss as to what to do. That's another quotation from a Supreme Court case. Now, the ruling on the case, which comes later into the decision, and it's about page 29 or so. Basically, the court then decided that the Secretary of State acted inappropriately. He disenfranchised these people, and that's not permitted to happen. Now, what that means is that a county can throw a monkey wrench into the entire process of certifying an election for Harris if, in fact, it's clear that that state has algorithms in the database and mail-in ballots, which is the major fraud element, turn out to have been important in the win for Harris, or any of the other down ballot elections. In other words, Congress or Senate or any elections down ballot, a county could refuse to certify. And if they did, the state would be blocked from certifying the state without that county. Now, again, the court case doesn't go into the full ramifications of what that means, but essentially what it means is that it's not going to be very easy for the Democrats to have a ton of mail-in ballots show up at the last minute. Because counties can say, we're not certifying. Okay, now, if the presence of an algorithm itself is against state and federal law, because you can't go in and have a artificial manipulation of the voter data, which hides information from the public and also even from the election commission. So the challenges that can be made to an election in a state where there's an algorithm are immediate. And the candidates who lose can come in and say, wait a minute, this was not a fair election. It means, by analogy, if you're playing 21 in a casino and you learn that that casino has been using marked cards, that casino cannot prove you lost any hand. Conceivably, every hand you lost was because you were cheated. Okay, so a state that uses a fraudulent state database of voters because it is being subverted by an algorithm that permits the creation of voters that don't exist who yet get state IDs, then in every state where there's an algorithm used, conceivably a county can throw a monkey wrench into it by objecting to the certification and preventing the certification by the state. So in other words, the challenge has to be to challenge certification. The scheme of the algorithms was to create non-existing voters and yet get them legitimate state ID numbers so that they could be voted. And the remedy, the antidote, is for the counties to refuse to certify on the basis that the election was conducted with a faulty database that was contaminated by an algorithm. So we've now come full circle and really seeing how this steal can be stopped. First of all, by exposing the scheme, so that it's much more difficult in these states with algorithms suddenly to produce millions of mail-in votes and run them through the machines. And I think that the observers ought to start asking for the ability to canvass some of these mail-in votes, go out into the county and see if these people exist. And if they don't exist, then again, there's more evidence of fraud. So we're developing now a much better rationale and argument. And if you go to God's Five Stones, you can follow it. Please do contribute to us. The donations help, and they'll help us do more states quicker. But we're going to be publishing next week a series of articles which will show, in fact, that we've got now not only Wisconsin, but Pennsylvania with algorithms in it. That's going to be massive, because Pennsylvania in many ways was the deciding state in 2024. Pennsylvania went, then Arizona went, and that's when Trump started to lose these battleground states in this prolonged counting of votes, which gave the Democrats enough time to get all their mail-in votes printed and run through the machines. I think the American people are catching on. And I think finally we played a role in that, even with my book on Kennedy, which if you'll show that here, Chris, which I published in March, which is the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the final analysis, in which we showed with David Mantik's X-rays. David Mantik went with an optical densitometer, and he studied the 3 extant existing JFK skull X-rays from the autopsy that was conducted at Bethesda on November 22nd, 1963, the night of the assassination. And you can see clearly that all 3 of the X-rays have been altered to mask evidence of frontal shots. There's clear frontal shots, one to the temple, which blew out the back of Jack Kennedy's head, one that hit at the forehead, and you can still see in the X-rays the bullet breaking up with the largest fragment at the back of the head, but not exiting. Clear evidence of frontal shot, which means that the government's been lying for 61 years that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gun assassin. This clearly puts there's 3 gunmen that was also Jack Kennedy's also in the back of his head at a low angle. So there's a gunman probably in the Dowtex building behind Jack Kennedy, at least one gunman on the grassy knoll and another in the south side of the grassy knoll up by the railroad yard. That's the bullet that went through the window and hit Kennedy in the neck. So the government lying is a theme that's running through, I think, everything we're seeing happening in our politics today. Now, if you take a look at what's going on in terms of these 2 hurricanes hitting, there's increasing evidence that the government, in fact, has weaponized the weather, and it has intensified the weather, and now has unleashed it so it hits the Republican states, approaching Texas. And what the assistance people are getting is negligible. Okay, so FEMA isn't doing its job, which means that these 2 hurricanes that have just hit Florida are a complete reminder that the federal government is not prepared to take care of individuals. The federal government is not where we're going to turning to the federal government to solve our problems is a mistake. Okay, and it's becoming clearer and clearer. The federal government lies to us. It takes our money. It produces. There's also evidence that now, going back and looking at the real economic data, that we've been in recession since 2022, which I've been saying is that the economy is extremely shaky. I'm going to cover that in a minute. But, Chris, do you want to comment on this government lying? I mean, I want to make this amazing. And what we found here with the algorithms and how I think we can basically prevent the steal by what we're doing at gods5stones.com.
Well, you guys are doing some excellent research at gods5stones.com, and now we're hearing what we think was going to happen anyway. You're going to find some sneaky algorithms in these swing states, these so-called disputed states, purple states, if you will, and these things will not only swing the national elections, they have the potential to swing congressional elections. We might see a weird congressional setup if that's the case too. Look, every time the Democrats lose power, they scream and yell and they throw a hissy fit and they try to say the other side stole the election. This has been going on probably since the 80s at this point. I remember the collective. I was younger, but I do remember the New York Times hissy fit over the inauguration. of Ronald Reagan. But that's a different story for a different day. The government is lying. They're lying about their FEMA response. They lied, of course, about allocating FEMA resources to illegal migrants 2 years ago and being proud of it, patting themselves on the back. The good thing is all this stuff's on video. A lot of these things are on video when they say one thing and do another. So that's a good thing. I believe that's the big turn from the 1960s on to today. There was a more innocent time up until Kennedy was shot. Of course, the game show scandal and everything else. But now these days, we have people who can do the research. There are resources out there, and there's always a good turncoat or two to say, "Hey, the government's really telling you something that's not true."
Well, it's the what we're finding is that the lies being told are just enormous. So, for instance, there's reports out that America's homeless population reached a record high under Biden and Harris. Okay, now that was obvious.
Right.
Okay, because again, but finally, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development said that there were 653,000 Americans homeless in 2023, which is I guess, an increase of 12%, which is the largest increase I think that's ever been recorded. Now this again is parcel of the slowdown of the economy. The middle class is getting absolutely squeezed. The cost of living crisis has hit the country with this higher inflation. Okay, and the economics I think are just apparent. So if we take a look at gold, for instance, gold today, let's just see what gold's trading at today.
Mhm.
Gold is trading at $2,614 an ounce, and silver's at $30.63 an ounce. Now, those are down a little bit, but not dramatically. But gold is going to hit $3,000 an ounce after the election, because after the election, we're going to get more of the truth about this economic crisis, and it's going to be dramatic. Okay, so the stock market is up again because of all the federal deficit spending, the liquidity. So the Federal Reserve is just pumping liquidity into the market to try to prop up Kamala Harris and make it look like she has actually been successful economically. But I'm encouraging people to go to, take a look on the truthcentral.com at all the things we're doing with Swiss America. We're going to be doing more, going to make it more central to the website. So first of all, get a copy of this book. And here's how you get a copy of the book, which is How Coming Global Crisis is going to, Chris is showing you now, The Secret War Against Cash. Here's the book, How the Coming Global Crash Will Cause an Historic Gold Rush. You can get it by calling toll-free number 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. And I think you can see in this that this is, in fact, a major statement in terms of the need to have some diversification into precious metals. If you see the stock market, which is now at 41,000 or 42,000 on the Dow, go down to 32,000, you lose 25% of your holdings, that could happen overnight. And that's not going to be, then with the economic turmoil we're going into, especially with the BRIC nations by the end of this year getting together and probably declaring a gold-backed currency, which is going to trash the dollar even further. Okay, so the economics at the moment are not in the favor of the Democrats. And Kamala Harris trying to say, she's going to a brighter future for America. What's she been doing for the past 4 years? It's the ability of people to believe these lies, it is astounding to me. Why people are so vulnerable and so easily fooled by lying is amazing. Okay, so if we go across, another couple more stories caught my attention about the this Biden-Harris failure, which has been the idea that Joe Biden was really competently functioning as president is ridiculous. Okay, so there's Woodward has a new book out. an upcoming book, and you know, Woodward is even saying that the United States, what's really dangerous under the Biden administration, is that we were on the verge of a nuclear war. So that what Woodward is going to talk about is that President Biden may have pushed the United States and the world to within a coin flip of a nuclear war in Ukraine. And I've been saying that for some time. Okay, so an article in Zero Hedge, which broke the news about Woodward's book, is saying that by September 2022, U.S. intelligence reports deemed exquisite revealed, quote, a deeply unnerving assessment of Putin that he was so desperate about battlefield losses he might use tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Based on the alarming new intelligence, White House believed there was a 50% chance Russia would use a tactical nuclear weapon, a striking assessment that had skyrocketed up from 5% and then 10%, according to Woodward. On all channels, get online with the Russians. Biden instructed his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, I think is one of the worst State Department people ever, pushed us into the Maidan rebellion, caused all this problem in Ukraine. It's to tell them what we'll do in response. Okay, so it didn't mean necessarily that we would use a nuclear weapon against Russia, but Biden must have been thinking of something that would deter the Russians from using a nuclear weapon. So therefore, he had to be suggesting we wouldn't hesitate to use nuclear weapons too. Now, how Biden was thinking this, or Obama, unless they were totally insane, or they were really depopulationists, as we've maintained. And they were just saying, okay, well, we're going to dramatically reduce the population of the world by having a little nuclear war. And these are the people that we're thinking about re-electing. It's crazy. We do not need to be putting back into power people who were actively contemplating the possibility of nuclear war. The insanity that's gone on here with the massive deficit spending, the increasing of world tensions, both in the Middle East and in Ukraine, and now Iran is still bracing for Israel's attack, which will come. And I see also that Zero Hedge is reporting as an article that we are now airlifting U.S. citizens out of Lebanon. And again, that has not been reported widely because we're another failure of our policy that we had the Hamas attack on Israel. Now we've had Hezbollah was preparing to attack Israel, so Israel attacked Hezbollah. And what Israel's doing is massive attacks. These are not fooling around. And when I've been in Israel, I've come to the conclusion many times that Israel will defend Israel. This is existential. Israel's not depending upon the United States or anyone else to defend it. Israel's more than capable of defending itself. Chris, would you want to comment on this? I think in general, I'm beginning to think that we need to have a massive turnout in the election to reflect the rallies we're seeing and make it impossible for the Democrats to say there was a surge for Harris, or that the polls are showing Harris is now running neck and neck with Trump. It's all nonsense and lies. The polls are rigged to show that. And you've got here the CIA, which is probably running the algorithms, thinking you can run our elections, and now is having a psychological operation to put out disinformation that Kamala Harris is surging in the polls because she's such an excellent campaigner. Chris, what do you think?
Well, what they don't have now that they had in 2020 that made lines like that feasible to to the people in the audience, excuse me, it was that there's no COVID fear. like there was in 2020. So you could say, well, Biden's not, nobody shows up at Biden rallies because people were afraid to spread COVID, blah, blah, blah. You can't say that at Kamala rallies, which are incredibly staged to look like they're as big as Trump rallies, but they're not. They're usually inside some high school gym size place or whatever, and people are kind of smushed together behind her, and sometimes in front of her. Rarely. The idea is this: the media cannot cover for it. They can't say, "Well, people are afraid to go out now. That's why Biden was only talking to 35 people, and they were in circles somewhere." Um, you see what's happened. The Hillary had the same problem in 2016 in her own primary when Bernard Sanders was filling up arenas while she could barely fill up a gym room again. And this is where the media is trying to stage everything, but now they can't. They have no excuses at this point. And if there are shenanigans like you're discussing and you're researching through these algorithms and gods5stones.com, we're going to see people standing up and saying, you know what, the, Biden, we get it. Maybe it was Trump hate. We're sure there was shenanigans, but maybe there was Trump hate. But this time, no, impossible. There's no way this woman could have gotten so many votes.
I want to cover. I agree. I mean, this is ridiculous. And Kamala is a terrible candidate, and she's not gaining support. There's none of her ideas out there that are gaining any traction. Her interviews are incoherent.
Yes.
Her cackling is irritating, inappropriate. I mean, it's like the woman is drunk half the time.
Did you watch that Howard Stern interview?
No, I didn't. I don't watch Howard Stern.
There is this guy used to be funny a long time ago. And since he's gone woke, he has been sycophantic toward the far left. And the drooling, disgusting slobbering all over this woman and of course pushing conspiracy theories and lies in the same interview was absolutely the lowest point I had ever seen this man.
Well, he's pretty low to start.
Right.
Look, the IEA is now saying that the world is nowhere near tripling the renewable energy by 2030. So despite all this hype and despite all the billions of dollars spent on renewable energy, we're nowhere on track of tripling renewable capabilities. This is according to a new report on renewables published by the International Energy Agency on yesterday. So global renewable capacity is expected to grow 2.7 times by 2030, surpassing a country's current ambitions by 25%, but falling far short of tripling. Okay, so what we're saying is that, the whole idea that we're going to have a transition to quote, 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 green energy. I don't know what's green about wind or solar. But the point is, it's not happening because the world needs hydrocarbon fuels in order to support the population we have globally, produce food for it, and also to make the modern industrial states work. If we have this net zero emission standard on the third world, we'll start killing millions of people. And that was the goal to begin with in the environmental movement, to kill billions of people. It's all been a lie. Everything the left has done is a lie. And it's satanic. And by the way, we're going to, I think, be publishing here a book by Archbishop Vigano on his excommunication from the Catholic Church by Pope Francis. And again, the Catholic Church has been taken over by a group of pedophile priests, become a homosexual organization in terms of its clergy. And that's one of the many things that the Archbishop is calling out. It's also calling out the doctrinal retreat from the idea that marriage is a sacrament between a man and a woman and done for procreation and the raising of children and a moral education. Pope Francis wants to have these bishop meetings, these synods, in which we establish a dialogue with these marginalized minorities, in other words, LGBT, and find a place for the LGBT within the Catholic Church, which is completely against natural law. These people are not reproducing. They're simply indulging in sex and bizarre behaviors for their own personal amusement. The world is in a strange, bizarre place right now. But I still do believe that in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. And I'm encouraging everybody in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14 to get down on our knees and ask God's forgiveness for letting the world get to this point. We're going to have a 1,000,000 woman march coming up here in Washington, D.C. It's going to be pro-life. Only God can produce life, bestow life upon us. We don't have the right to take it away, chop up babies in the womb. It's barbaric. This has got to stop, and we've got to ask God to forgive us for not getting involved, not stopping it sooner. But I think we're going to go through a judgment of God, and we're going to see the economies are going to next trash. But I think Donald Trump is making a solid statement that he is in the lead and going to stay in the lead. And I don't see Kamala Harris making up the difference. Dr. Jerome Corsi today. It's Thursday. It's October 10th, 2024. We're doing podcasts on thetruthcentral.com every weekday. Thank you for joining us. Please pass the word about the show. If you like the show, let others know about it. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.